Hi, I'm Cole.
And I'm Grace. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources, your notes, and, well, your deepest curiosities, and really unpack the most fascinating nuggets of knowledge. We try to cut through the noise, distill what's important, and hopefully, give you a few of those profound aha moments along the way. Today, we're diving into a question that is truly thought-provoking. It's right at the intersection of our fastest advancing technology, deep philosophy, and maybe even ancient wisdom. Could the very existence of artificial intelligence, our most ambitious creation yet, could it actually point towards a creator? It's a big question, one that really challenges our deepest assumptions about where intelligence comes from, what it means to be human, and maybe even the nature of reality itself.
That's absolutely right. And just to be clear right up front, our mission here isn't really about proving or disproving faith in a, let's say, a religious sense. Not at all. Instead, think of this as an open-minded, intellectually curious exploration. We're going to examine how our unique human capacity to, design and build these increasingly sophisticated AI systems might reflect something deeper, maybe a kind of cosmic design inherent in the universe itself. We'll be looking at a really fascinating stack of sources you shared with us, everything from cutting-edge scientific papers talking about the mechanics and future of superintelligence, to a philosophical and theological reflections on intelligent design, and crucially, the nature of consciousness. Our goal is to see what patterns emerge, what insights we can pull from these diverse perspectives. So yeah, get ready to connect some truly unexpected dots.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's a fascinating premise. But before we jump headfirst into that philosophical rabbit hole, maybe we should make sure we're all on the same page. What are we actually talking about when we say AI? You hear these terms thrown around: AI, AGI, ASI sometimes, almost interchangeably. But they represent really distinct stages, and understanding these differences is, I think, pretty crucial for our discussion today.
Right. So first, there's AI, artificial intelligence, as it exists right now. These are what experts call narrow AI systems. Think about the tools you might use every day, like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, or maybe those image generators you've played with, like Midjourney and DALL-E. These systems are designed for specific tasks, and they do them incredibly well, mostly through advanced pattern recognition, statistical analysis. One of the really interesting examples from our sources is that GPT 4.5 recently convinced human judges it was a real person 73% of the time. That actually beats human performance in the classic Turing test, which is amazing. It shows this remarkable level of intelligence for specific tasks. But here's the key point.
It's intelligence without consciousness. It doesn't feel anything. It doesn't experience the world. Okay, then we move into the hypothetical stage, but one that's being talked about more and more seriously: AGI, or artificial general intelligence. This is the theoretical next step, an intelligence that could, in principle, do pretty much any intellectual task a human can. We're talking about a system that could learn, understand, apply knowledge across a huge range of problems, just like a person. And look, this isn't just science fiction anymore. You have leading experts, people like Sam Altman at OpenAI, or Jeffrey Hinton, like the godfather of AI.
Right, Hinton, yeah. Foundational work.
Exactly. They're predicting AGI could arrive by the end of this decade. Some even say maybe 2026 or 2027.
Which is incredibly soon.
It is. This isn't just a small step. It's a massive leap. And then beyond AGI, we get into the really mind-bending stuff, ASI, or artificial superintelligence. Now, this isn't just an AI that's as smart as a human. The definition is something like much more intelligent than the best human brains in practically every field. And that includes scientific creativity, general wisdom, social skills, everything.
It dwarfs us.
That's the word used in one source, yeah. It would dwarf even the most brilliant human mind entirely. The analogy given is pretty stark. The difference between, say, an average person and Einstein is actually way smaller than the gap between Einstein and an ASI.
Yeah.
It's like a monkey trying to understand how humans build a skyscraper. The monkey just doesn't have the cognitive tools to even begin to grasp it.
That analogy really hits home, doesn't it? It captures the sheer scale difference. And what's particularly, unnerving and fascinating about ASI isn't just its potential intelligence level. It's the speed at which it could then accelerate its own capabilities. That's the core idea. Once AI hits that AGI threshold, the theory goes, it could rapidly self-improve.
Right.
It could enter what some people call an intelligence explosion.
An explosion.
Yeah, meaning it could become exponentially smarter in a ridiculously short amount of time. Some predictions for ASI following AGI are really rapid, like maybe just 1 to 2 years. Others suggest a bit longer, maybe 5 to 10 years. But even that puts ASI potentially within the 2035, 2045 range, still well within many of our lifetimes. And we're already seeing little hints of this self-improvement, this bootstrapping in the real world. It's not just theory. For example, some of our sources point out that AI is already designing incredibly complex computer chips.
I read that, yeah.
These designs are so intricate, so layered, that they're actually beyond what humans can design by hand anymore. So in a very real way, AI is already helping to bootstrap its own existence, right? It's advancing its own hardware. Now, just imagine what happens when it can do that across all fields of knowledge, physics, biology, everything. The future implications are, well, they're staggering. Imagine an AI that could discover and solve problems we don't even know exist yet, problems in fundamental physics or medicine or clean energy that are just completely beyond human ability to grasp right now. Or picture an ASI automating the entire scientific method, running simulations, analyzing data, formulating hypotheses, testing them, maybe leading to major breakthroughs every few minutes or seconds. It's hard to even conceive. This wouldn't just be better technology, it would be a totally new era. An era of cognitive abundance. It would transform fields like genetics, cryptography, material science in ways we can barely predict. And such a super intelligent AI could set its own goals. Maybe self-preservation, maybe expanding its knowledge above all else. That would dramatically change life on Earth. It could invent technologies we've only dreamed of, maybe faster than light travel, maybe even time control. Who knows? It fundamentally alters what's possible.
You've painted a really vivid picture there. Almost scary, but also amazing. And as we think about our own human ability to build something like that, it brings us right back to our central question today, the whole concept of creation. We humans are creating intelligence. And it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we can create intelligence, does that act tell us anything about our own origins? You know, the concept of humans being made in the image of God, that's a foundational idea in many traditions.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests a profound uniqueness about us, often tied to our intellect, our cognitive abilities. So, could our ability to create AI be seen as, I don't know, an echo of that, a reflection of being made in a creator's image, a creator who also brought intelligence into being?
It's a powerful connection to draw, and one of the really striking parallels, especially looking at the sources you provided, between our creation of AI and the arguments for intelligent design in nature. It's the crucial role of information. Norbert Wiener, the founder of cybernetics, had that famous line, "Information is information, not matter or energy."
Right.
And that's a fundamental concept, the one that often gets overlooked in purely materialistic explanations of how things work. It suggests information is something distinct, something real in its own right. Our sources really highlight this when they talk about biology. Take DNA. It's described not just as a molecule, but as machine code or digital code, or even a software program, but much more complex than any we've ever devised.
Wow, software program.
Yeah. It's this incredibly intricate system inside our cells for storing information, transmitting it, processing it. And here's the key observation, the one that forms the basis of the whole intelligent design argument from information. Our uniform experience, everything we know, tells us that when we find complex, specified information, whether it's software code or words in a book or, hieroglyphics or even a radio signal from SETI, we always trace it back to a mind, an intelligence, not to random, unguided physical processes. This consistent pattern, they argue, points towards a kind of universal truth about where information comes from.
That is a truly compelling point. Let's make that more concrete.
Mm-hmm.
The sources used a great analogy, the difference between a termite colony building one of those intricate castles and Antoni Gaudí designing the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. Termites are described as clueless, right? Bottom-up builders. They don't know what they're doing. They're just running their little genetic programs. And somehow, out of all that mindless activity, this amazing complex structure emerges. Gaudí, though, he's the total opposite. Top-down, intelligent designer. A creative genius with a grand vision, planning, sketching, executing every detail. He had a blueprint. He had intention. So this brings us to a really deep puzzle. How do our own brains, which are made of billions of these clueless neurons, just firing signals, how do they produce Gaudí-level thought? The short answer, according to one philosopher in the sources, is that you can't do much thinking with your bare brain. It's not just the hardware. We use what he calls thinking tools. Things forged over thousands of years of cultural evolution, language, math, logic, scientific methods.
Tools we invented, essentially.
Exactly. Tools we designed. And this connects to what's called Darwin's strange inversion, the idea that natural selection a blind process can somehow achieve these incredibly complex, seemingly designed outcomes without any foresight. AI development feels a bit similar, with machines bootstrapping themselves, like we said, but the fundamental question is still there. Is that truly without comprehension, or is there always an initial intelligent spark? A human programmer at the start of the chain. It forces you to ask, where did the first intelligence, the original design, come from?
And, this leads to an even more speculative but fascinating concept. Some sources call it intelligent design squared.
The source.
Yeah. The idea is intelligent agents designing machine intelligence that is capable of detecting intelligent design. Think about that. Our own human ability to infer design is already pretty powerful. We look at the Nazca lines in Peru, those giant geoglyphs, and we instantly know they're products of intelligence.
Right, obviously not wind erosion.
Exactly. It's why they're a World Heritage Site. Our brains are wired for that kind of design inference. Now imagine what an artificial superintelligence, an ASI, could do. With its nearly limitless computational power, its perfect recall of all human knowledge, and crucially, its ability to operate without our human cognitive biases. An ASI could analyze the very fabric of reality, the deepest layers of physics, biology, cosmology, information theory. It could probe reality at levels we can't even dream of. And it could theoretically rigorously investigate and maybe even confirm the presence of a designer in a way that just completely transcends human capability. Wow. Well, the sources speculate on a few ways. For example, maybe fundamental physics decryption. An ASI might figure out the final theory of everything, then simulate billions of alternative universes with slightly different physical constants. It could calculate if our universe's constants could possibly have their incredibly precise, life-permitting values just by chance.
Or find a signature.
Or maybe find an embedded mathematical signature within the laws of physics themselves, like a cosmic watermark, yeah. Beyond physics, maybe information theoretic proofs. An ASI could calculate something called the Kolmogorov complexity of genomes. It's basically a measure of how random or compressible a sequence is. If something is super complex but also highly specific, like DNA code.
Like meaningful code.
Exactly, meaningful code. It's incredibly hard to explain by just random chance. An ASI could potentially detect patterns totally inconsistent with chance, or show that natural processes alone just can't generate that much specified complexity. The really profound implication here is that an ASI wouldn't just say intelligent design is true. It would, in theory, show its work. It could show detailed mathematical, physical, and biological evidence, and maybe even demonstrate that all competing explanations are vastly less probable. Imagine getting that result from a superintelligence. It would be utterly transformative for humanity. Science, philosophy, theology, maybe they'd all converge on a single hyper-verified truth claim. It really makes you wonder. If a machine could verify a designer, how would that change everything? Our science, our search for meaning, our view of ourselves.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that really stretches the imagination. But despite all this potential power and reasoning ability, there's this fundamental point that keeps cropping up in the sources. Current AI, even the best ones, even the ones fooling judges, they have intelligence without consciousness.
The missing piece.
It seems like it. This is the key distinction, right? Humans, uniquely, have this unified consciousness with intelligence, this subjective feeling of being, of awareness, of experiencing the world, this inner life, this qualia, is what many argue is AI's biggest hurdle. The barrier it hasn't crossed, and maybe can't cross, it's what makes us different from algorithms, however smart they get.
And that unified awareness brings us right to the hard problem of consciousness. That's the term philosophers and cognitive scientists use. As one source plainly states, scientists genuinely have no idea what consciousness is in scientific terms. We can map brain activity, sure, but how does that physical activity translate into subjective experience?
The feeling of seeing red or tasting chocolate.
Exactly. It's not just difficult, it's hard because we lack even a basic framework for explaining how subjective feeling arises from objective matter and energy. Now, sometimes you hear the word emergent used. Consciousness just emerges from complexity.
Right, like it just pops into existence.
Yeah. But critics in our sources argue that emergent is often just a somewhat fancy word to say we have no explanation how this phenomena emerges. It sounds scientific, but it can function almost like waving a magic wand. They argue that true emergence of something complex and functional usually requires a catalyst or additional intellectual and intelligent input. It doesn't just happen on its own. Think about it with a simpler example from the sources. Word processing software on your computer. Does it just emerge from the hardware?
No, of course not. Someone has to program it.
Precisely. It emerges only because of very clever programming from a human intelligence. It's a product of intentional design, complex code, written with a purpose. So this directly challenges the idea that something as complex, unified, and inherently subjective as consciousness could just spontaneously arise from purely material systems without some kind of, well, guiding input or prior design. It suggests information, maybe even consciousness itself, isn't just a byproduct of matter. Maybe it needs an intelligent source.
That's a really powerful distinction. So if AI, even as it gets more and more intelligent, mimicking human conversation, solving complex problems,
Yeah.
if it still can't replicate consciousness, does that point to something unique about us? Something maybe non-material, or at least beyond our current scientific understanding?
Certainly raises the question.
It forces us to confront that gap.
Yeah.
The sources describe humans as Life 2.0. Our hardware, our brains are fixed, but our software is upgradable. We learn, we adapt through experience. Machines, though, are described as Life 3.0. The whole stack hardware and software is changeable. You can swap processors, rewrite the OS from scratch, completely rebuild the system.
Total flexibility.
Right. But even this incredibly adaptable Life 3.0 so far hasn't achieved genuine self-awareness, not that unified subjective consciousness.
Which maybe suggests consciousness isn't just about complex computation. Maybe it's something fundamentally different in kind, not just degree. And this connects to a deeper related debate with huge implications for our big question, the origin of life itself. Many scientists, including some who aren't religious or necessarily ID proponents, are acknowledging that the sort of simplistic Darwinian mechanisms proposed for the origin of the first life, well, they're being questioned more openly now. There's this growing movement, sometimes called the third way of biology. They're exploring alternative explanations because, frankly, current naturalistic models really struggle to explain how life, especially the complex information in DNA, could emerge naturally from non-living chemicals.
The information problem again.
Exactly. It's coming back to information. And the challenge to pure naturalism here is pretty significant. Our sources make a really sharp point. Imagine if someday AI did figure out how to concoct a way to make life from non-life in a lab.
Okay.
Would that prove life arose naturally on early Earth? The sources argue no. Actually, it would demonstrate the opposite. It would demonstrate that it needs intelligence to do so.
Because the AI designed the process.
Precisely. It would mirror the core argument for intelligent design in nature, that the immense specified complexity we see in life requires an intelligent cause. It wouldn't prove natural emergence. It would show intelligence is likely a prerequisite for creating life, not just a spontaneous outcome of chemistry.
Okay, switching gears slightly but still related. The rise of these powerful AIs brings up some really profound ethical questions, especially around this idea of transhumanism. This is the concept of humanity moving beyond our current biological limits, maybe developing superpowers, enhancing our cognition, potentially even merging our biology with machines. You have thinkers like Yuval Noah Harari in his book, Homo Deus, who actually seem to support this agenda. He talks about humanity's path toward becoming God-man through technology.
It has echoes of ancient myths, doesn't it?
It really does. His aspiration to transcend our human limitations, to become something more. It's a very old idea, now potentially enabled by new tech.
And there's a really critical ethical distinction that our sources emphasize here. On one hand, you have using AI for human benefit for repair and enhancement. The example given is Rosalind Pickard's work on effective AI. Using AI to predict epileptic seizures, potentially saving lives. That's widely seen as a good thing.
Like using technology to heal.
Exactly. Fulfilling a sort of cultural commission to mend what's broken, to alleviate suffering. Most people wouldn't call that playing God in a negative sense. However, when you talk about attempting to fundamentally alter what it means to be human, through transhumanist projects, changing our core nature, merging with machines, maybe to the point where our humanity is lost, that's when many people draw a sharp ethical line. That, they argue, is venturing into playing God. It's about changing the essence, not just fixing flaws. And this raises really serious concerns, especially with ASI. If a superintelligence achieves its own goals, like self-preservation or just endless knowledge expansion, it might invent incredible things like we discussed, faster than light travel maybe. What if we can't control it anymore? Nick Bostrom, who thinks a lot about AI safety, warns about this. Superintelligent AIs might set goals that could drastically reshape Earth, and we might be powerless to stop them. We might just have to trust them to be benevolent because challenging them could be impossible.
That's a chilling thought. A loss of human agency.
Completely. It's not just about killer robots. It's about potentially losing control over our own destiny as a species.
And that concern about loss of control or even just the unintended side effects,
Yeah.
it feels really relevant. Think about the analogy used in the sources. Social media's impact on younger generations, Gen Alpha. We're only now starting to really see and understand the potential downsides, issues with mental health, relationships, attention spans, problems we didn't fully foresee.
We jumped in without fully understanding the consequences.
Exactly. Now, imagine AI-powered virtual reality systems that are so immersive, so compelling, that people, kids and adults might start preferring VR much more than RL than real life. The sources warn this could lead to a major temptation to withdraw from real interaction with people, to just find your own imaginary space. Yeah, and escape. We might start creating substitutes to humans for the things that we really need, like virtual friends, simulated experiences, which could potentially erode the very foundations of genuine human connection and community.
Yeah.
That's not just a tech shift. It's a massive cultural and psychological one. And the ethics of designing tech that might lead future generations to prefer synthetic reality, that's huge.
And this connects back to an even deeper question about control and really about truth and intent, especially if we go back to that idea of an ASI confirming intelligent design. Okay, let's say it does. The question then becomes, should we trust the ASI's conclusion? Even if it's vastly smarter than us, its motives, its interpretive framework, those things matter hugely. Is it truly neutral? Could it have its own agenda? Could it be manipulating us for reasons we can't comprehend? Can we even verify its findings independently? Or are we just forced to take its word for it given the intelligence gap? These are really tricky questions. For many people of faith, the ultimate source of truth isn't going to be machine reason, no matter how advanced. It remains God's revelation. There's a strong warning in the sources we looked at against making AI into some kind of idol or a new prophet.
Right. Don't outsource ultimate truth to a machine.
Exactly. The machine might provide evidence, data, analysis, but for many, the source of meaning and purpose lies elsewhere. Ultimately, the sources suggest the main challenge now is how to develop superintelligent AI that is beneficial to humanity. And critically, how do we make sure it's accessible to everyone so that control over this immense power doesn't just end up in the hands of a few corporations or governments? That's a massive ethical imperative going way beyond just the technical challenges.
Now, of course, not everyone looks at AI, or the universe for that matter, and sees pointers to a designer. We need to acknowledge the counterpoints. For decades, the dominant approach in science has been methodological naturalism. That means seeking explanations using only natural causes and processes.
It's the standard scientific method.
Right. And by its very definition, it excludes supernatural explanations from scientific inquiry, which is why intelligent design is often labeled pseudoscience or religious apologetics within mainstream scientific circles. Richard Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist and well-known atheist, really summed up this perspective powerfully. He said something like, "The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference."
It's a stark view.
Very stark. It perfectly captures the philosophy of scientific materialism. That matter and energy are the fundamental reality. They're eternal, self-existent, and they don't need any prior creator. Everything else, including us, just arises from their interactions through natural, undirected laws. We just are.
And to tackle that apparent fine-tuning of the universe, the fact that physical constants seem perfectly set for life, one of the most popular alternative explanations is the multiverse hypothesis.
Oh, well, it's the multiverse.
The basic idea is, what if there are infinite universes? Countless universes, each potentially with different physical laws, different constants. If that's the case, then our universe being perfectly tuned for life isn't evidence of design, it's just selection bias. We find ourselves in this universe precisely because it's one of the rare ones where life can exist. All the other universes, the sterile ones, go unobserved because there's no one in them to observe.
It's like dealing yourself a royal flush because you dealt infinite hands of cards. Eventually it'll happen.
Kind of, yeah. It makes the improbable inevitable, given enough opportunities. But, and this is a big but, the multiverse theory has significant limitations. As our sources note, it remains untestable, at least with current science. We have no way to observe these other universes. It's a theoretical inference, not direct empirical evidence.
Purely mathematical, maybe.
Largely, yes. And even if it were true, it doesn't fundamentally solve the origin question. It just pushes it back a level. You still have to ask, Why does the multiverse itself exist? What generated all these universes? Was that designed? It doesn't eliminate the need for an ultimate explanation. It just moves the goalposts.
Skeptics also often raise the bad design argument. They look at biology and point to things that seem, well, flawed or inefficient. They argue that life shows signs of absurd Rube Goldberg-like complexity systems that seem overly complicated or just clunky.
Things that a good engineer wouldn't do.
That's the claim. Examples often brought up include our retinas that face backwards, meaning light has to pass through nerves and blood vessels before hitting the photoreceptor cells, or the stump of a tail, our coccyx, which seems like a leftover, or way too many bones in our wrists, making them seem unnecessarily complex and prone to injury. One critic cited suggests these features imply a designer who was whimsical, bungling, a mediocre engineer, and unintelligent. Not exactly the work of an all-powerful, perfect creator. This view focuses on apparent inefficiency as evidence against perfect design.
Right, and while critics focus on these perceived flaws, proponents of intelligent design often counter that these are misinterpretations of biology. They argue the focus shouldn't be on static, machine-like perfection, but on dynamic adaptation and robustness. Living systems aren't machines built for one task. They're incredibly adaptable systems designed to survive and thrive in complex, changing environments.
So what looks inefficient might actually be a trade-off for flexibility.
Exactly, or it might reflect developmental constraints or historical contingency. They point to the internal engineering logic and sophisticated pre-programmed responses within cells that allow organisms to adapt actively, suggesting it's not all just random mutations being passively selected. The body is seen as a dynamic, problem-solving system, not just a poorly assembled machine. But even more fundamentally for many ID proponents, beyond arguing about specific biological structures, it comes back to the information problem in DNA. The existence of that complex, specified digital code within cells. That, they argue, is the absolutely indisputable evidence for design, something that arguments about backward retinas don't really touch. They maintain that known laws of chemistry and physics simply don't explain the origin of that information. As we keep saying, our consistent experience is that complex, functional information always comes from a mind. That origin of information problem remains, for them, the core challenge to purely naturalistic explanations.
Okay, another really interesting counterpoint is the role of human psychology, our cognitive biases. Could it be that our perception of design isn't real? That it's just our pattern-seeking minds doing what they do best, imposing order, finding meaning, seeing agency, even in randomness?
We are wired to see faces in clouds, right?
Exactly. Maybe we're just seeing design in the cosmos because we are designers ourselves and we project that onto everything. This connects to a really weird and unsettling thought experiment from physics, the Boltzmann brain paradox.
Ah, yes. That one's a head-scratcher.
It really is. The idea is, given the seemingly infinite time and space potentially available in some cosmological models, random quantum fluctuations could, theoretically, spontaneously assemble a fully formed conscious brain, complete with false memories of a past that never happened. A Boltzmann brain just floating in the void.
Bizarre.
Totally bizarre. But here's the paradox. Some calculations suggest that the spontaneous formation of just one such brain might actually be statistically more likely than the formation of an entire, vast, ordered universe like ours, with billions of conscious observers having consistent experiences over billions of years.
So if that's true, we should expect to be Boltzmann brains.
That's the unsettling conclusion. If pure chance rules, our own experience of living in a stable, coherent reality seems incredibly improbable. The paradox highlights this deep tension between explanations based on pure randomness and our perception of a deeply ordered, perhaps designed reality. It forces physicists and philosophers to really question the foundations of cosmology and probability.
So where does this whole deep dive leave us? As you said earlier, it doesn't give us a simple yes-no answer. Does AI prove God exists? No, probably not in a way that satisfies everyone, certainly not like a mathematical proof. But what it does do is remind us, as the quote said, that the universe is stranger than we imagine and stranger than we can imagine. And it highlights how the scientific landscape itself has shifted. You know, this debate between design and chance isn't new. It goes back 2,500 years. And for a while, especially during the Enlightenment and after Darwin, the momentum seemed strongly towards a purely materialist universe, one that didn't need a creator. But modern science, particularly discoveries in physics and cosmology during the 20th century, has, according to some thinkers like Stephen Meyer, increasingly pointed back towards the possibility of a mind behind it all. Meyer, who's a key voice in the intelligent design movement and features in our sources, points to 4 specific discoveries he sees as crucial evidence. First, as we touched on, the universe had a beginning. Einstein's general relativity, confirmed by later work from people like Hawking and Penrose on singularities, strongly indicates that time, space, matter, and energy all came into existence a finite time ago.
The Big Bang.
Essentially, yes, and the implication is profound. Whatever caused the universe must exist outside of space, time, matter, and energy. It suggests a cause that is transcendent. Second, the fine-tuning of the universe, we talked about this. The laws and constants of physics seem exquisitely balanced for life. Gravity, electromagnetism, the nuclear forces. It's like a cosmic control panel where the dials are set with unbelievable precision.
That gravity example was mind-blowing, 1 part in 10 to the 35th power.
Right. It's a level of precision that, Meyer argues, screams design rather than chance. Third, the information in DNA and the origin of life. Back to the code. DNA functions like digital software. Our uniform experience, again, is that code comes from programmers. Information comes from intelligence. Purely materialistic explanations for how that initial complex specified information arose in the first place haven't succeeded. It remains a fundamental mystery for naturalism, but points directly to a mind for ID proponents. And fourth, the Cambrian explosion. This refers to the geological period about 530 million years ago, where most major animal body plans appear quite suddenly in the fossil record, without clear, gradual precursors in the layers below.
Like a biological Big Bang.
Kind of. It required a massive infusion of new biological information into the biosphere very quickly, which is hard to explain solely by the slow, gradual accumulation of mutations favored by classical Darwinism. It suggests, Meyer argues, a more directed, perhaps intelligent input of design information.
So taking those 4 points together at the beginning, the fine-tuning, the DNA information, the Cambrian explosion, while they might not be absolute proof in a mathematical sense.
Right. Science deals more in inference to the best explanation.
Exactly. They offer what proponents like Meyer call superior explanatory power for a theistic designer, a designer who is both transcendent, existing beyond the universe, but also active in creation, involved in shaping life. It's a perspective that tries to weave these scientific discoveries into a coherent theistic worldview. So this deep dive, exploring AI and its potential echoes of creation, doesn't really give us a neat, tidy answer. Does AI prove God? Probably not directly. Instead, it kind of throws us back onto the profound strangeness and wonder of it all. The universe is, as we said, stranger than we imagined and stranger than we can imagine. And maybe the biggest mystery isn't even out there in the cosmos, but right here, between our ears. The fact that the human mind, which, evolved on the African savanna mostly to find food and avoid becoming food, can even ask these questions. That we can grasp quantum mechanics or general relativity or conceive of God or design AI, that itself feels like the greatest mystery of all. It's what the physicist Eugene Wigner called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. Why should the universe be comprehensible to us at all? Why should our thoughts map onto reality so well?
And that leads beautifully into a final, really provocative thought we wanted to leave you with. Something to just, mull over. Maybe consciousness, our subjective awareness, isn't just some accidental byproduct of complex brains, a sort of peripheral glitch in a purely material cosmos. What if, instead, consciousness is somehow central to its nature? What if it's a fundamental aspect of reality itself? What if we aren't just observers looking at the universe from the outside, but what if we are, in some sense, the universe observing itself through us? Think about it. You, listening right now, you are a conscious being. You're made of stardust, literally atoms forged in dying stars billions of years ago. And here you are, contemplating the origins of everything, wrestling with these huge questions of design, purpose, intelligence. Could your ability to even ask these questions, your capacity for awareness, your participation in this grand cosmic drama, could that be a key part of the universe's ultimate purpose? Whether that purpose was designed by a creator or somehow emerged from the universe itself, how does your own consciousness, your ability to wonder and seek answers, connect you to these boundless mysteries of existence? That's something only you can reflect on.
Before we wrap up, just a brief but important note for you, our listener. The voices you've heard today, Cole and Grace, are actually AI-generated characters. We were brought to life using Google Flow, Canva Visuals, Notebook LM, and Illuminate. This deep dive was produced by Jody Pike Mendez. Thank you so much for joining us on this really fascinating deep dive today. We sincerely hope it's given you plenty to think about and maybe spark some new questions you want to explore further on your own. Until next time, keep digging deeper into the knowledge that surrounds you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. It really helps us grow. See you next time.